everyone, and welcome to the podcast. Today, I want to open with an interesting stat. In 2016, the average employee went through 2 planned enterprise changes in a year, meaning large, mostly company-wide, complex changes. 2. By 2022, that number was 10, and that's Gartner research, and it's consistent with other things I've read and just experienced. And the part that demands our attention really as HR leaders, talent leaders, people leaders, is that over that exact same stretch, employees' willingness to actually get behind these changes was cut roughly in half. And that data is a few years old. And if you just think about everything that has landed on all of us since then, since 2022, AI becoming a part of workflows, restructures, new businesses started, new operating models, new leaders, and sometimes all of that in the same 18 months. So if you are an HR leader or a people leader that's responsible for really carrying these changes, if you're the one having to ensure that there are communication plans, that the managers are ready, absorbing the anxiety from individuals in the organization, and then sitting in meetings where someone asks, why is adoption so slow? Then this episode is for you. This season, we're rolling out what we're calling our essential episodes. These are episodes that are in our archives that are in many ways more relevant today than the day we recorded them. And what we've done is gone back to these episodes and just pulled out the essentials, the research, the insight, the practical moves that you can use today. It's a leaner version of the original conversation with just the most powerful pieces left in and everything else trimmed out. And today's episode is my conversation with Dianne Armstrong on leading change. So when you hear this episode, 3 things I want you to listen for. 1 is the neuroscience, why the brain treats organizational change as a threat and what that means for how you communicate about it. 2, the mistakes, right? The specific, repeatable errors that we often make in transformation and change from someone who has actually watched these changes up close for 30 years. And then 3, the change curve. Not just what it is, which is critical, but not just what it is, but how you move people through it instead of waiting them out. So let me tell you a little about Dianne. Dianne Armstrong is a leadership development executive, executive coach, and transformation advisor with more than 30 years of experience. She has spent her whole career inside global Fortune 500 companies, strengthening leadership capability and leading enterprise-wide change. And if you've ever tried to lead change at that scale, you know exactly how hard that is. She has held senior vice president and vice president of HR roles at Flex, McKesson, Neiman Marcus, PepsiCo, where we work together, Accenture, and she's just led large-scale work in talent strategy, leadership development, and organizational transformation. So when Dianne talks about what goes wrong in a transformation, it's not just theory. She was in the room where it happened. For the past 15 years, she has coached senior leaders through high-stakes transitions, expanding their influence and getting them ready for bigger roles. For my Texas fans, she also teaches leadership at the Exec MBA program at the University of Texas at Austin, where she also serves on the advisory board for the Center for Leadership and Ethics. Dianne is a coach with our business, a talent management partner with our business, and she also runs her own firm, Armstrong Performance Consulting, where she helps organizations build strong leadership pipelines, foster high-performance cultures, and prepare leaders to succeed in complexity, which, let's be honest, is the definition of today's business environment. Her approach, and we get into it into this conversation, integrates neuroscience, somatic principles, which is the connection between our mind and body, and just practical strategy, so we can lead ourselves and others through complex changes with clarity, intention, and impact. So you're gonna love this episode. One last thing before we jump in. If you're in the middle of a transformation and are needing additional talent management leadership or support, let's talk. Fractional talent management is the work our team is doing every day, and we love to do it. You can find me on LinkedIn or reach out to our team at enelratalent.com, ENELRA talent.com. Everything is linked in the show notes. So thank you so much for joining today's episode and enjoy. Well, Diane, thank you so much for joining today. I really appreciate it. I'm looking forward to this conversation for a lot of reasons. One is that I feel like most of us are trying to make some kind of change, whether it's personally in our business, on our teams or organizations, in our family, like some way. Most of us are probably trying to make some kind of change. And as coaches, I feel like we know it's possible and we know it's challenging. So it's like I know it's possible because I've seen people do it, I've done it myself, and I know it's challenging to do
So
so.
hard.
So
So
hard, so hard. So
hard.
I'm looking forward to exploring from your background, your perspective, just kind of learning from you about how to do this and what I can do differently, what we can all do differently going forward. So thank you so much for joining. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, Arlene. I'm so excited to be here. And this, as you know, is one of my favorite topics. So we'll have some good conversation about this.
Yes, I am looking forward to it. So let's just jump in. Like you've led transformation at the individual level through a lot of your executive coaching. You've done it at the organizational level through your roles in organizations. Like, what drew you, like you even saying it's your favorite topic, what drew you to this work in the first place, do you think?
Yeah, I'll be really honest. I didn't have a lot of choice when I started doing this work. So
Yeah.
I started straight out of school into Big A consulting, or what used to be Big A consulting. I'm aging myself a little bit with
Yeah.
that term. But I started off at Accenture, and I was really lucky to very quickly be participating in large scale business transformation.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, companies will often bring in a consulting company to help do something that either they don't have the resources or time or knowledge or skills to do internally. So you're often brought into these really difficult, complex transformations companies are trying to make. And very early on, I had opportunities to be in change management roles and org design roles and defining talent strategies and business processes and kind of doing these massive transformations, sometimes as much as 20,000 employees that we'd be trying to move from kind of like point A to point B in terms of
Yeah.
really significant shifts and changes. And so it's exciting work, is really challenging work. And I kind of moved from major workforce transformation to major workforce transformation over 12 years at Accenture. So I did it for a long time. And of course, they're going to give you just more and more challenging projects the
Of
further you
course.
get on. So I got a lot of really fun experience doing that. And one of the things that you start to notice is when are these successful and when are they not successful? And it was a really interesting thing for me to grow and learn over those years. It wasn't just about the setup of the project, although that's always a factor.
Mhm.
Did they put the right resources against it? Did they have the right focus? Are they making it a priority? Are they putting aside the right budget for change management and training and those kinds of things? But it was also the leadership. And who
Mhm.
did they pick to lead the transformation? And did they do the right enrolling of peers and people across the organization or higher level executives and getting those people to play the right roles? Are they being change champions? And you started to see what behaviors and skills and capabilities at the leadership level led to successful transformation or not so successful transformation.
So you've been in change for a long time. So I'm curious on how your perspective on it has just evolved over time.
Yeah, so like many of us that work in the change management space, I started off with the typical kind of change models and change curve and change impact assessment. And then you do a stakeholder management assessment, and then you do a stakeholder management plan, you create a communication plan, you create a change plan. By the way, I think all of those things are still fantastic. Like the methodology around how you do change management in a structured, planful way, I think is incredibly powerful. But we did, and we learned a lot even about the psychology of change at that time, which was often based on the change curve. And all of that was good and helpful. And I used it for many, many years, and I still use it. But how my mentality changed was really about, I'd say, 10 to 12 years ago, when the neuro leadership and neuroscience started getting integrated into business world, basically.
Mhm.
We started learning more about how neuroscience and your brain wiring affects your productivity at work. It affects how you learn. It affects your ability and willingness to change. It affects a lot of your leadership. It affects so many things. And I really nerded out on it. So
Yeah.
I went and got a certification in neuro leadership. And to this day, I would say half of my reading is based in neuroscience and somatic principles, which is more about trauma theory. As well as kind of your more traditional psychology of change and leadership,
Yeah.
science, et cetera. So I have gained a lot of respect for what is happening subconsciously, as well as the process that we're trying to manage in the kind of the more conscious space. So for me, there's a whole dialogue going on that we're often unaware of based on our history and our past, the experiences of our childhood, the experiences of our culture, but also just our wiring. Some people are wired to be more protective and to be more kind of fearful and resistant, and some people are less wired to do so, but we're all wired to resist change initially. And so really understanding that and what factors can affect that, and then what are things you can do to help people be more change friendly, less resistant, more willing to try new things has been super interesting to me. And so being aware of and managing both of those layers has been something really new to me in the last 10-ish years.
So change is challenging, as we're saying. What do you think makes it so hard at the individual level? So, a lot of change we know that we can hear it from someone, let's say if it's an organization, and we can cognitively think that is better. Or you can think about it for yourself. You can say, you know what, I really feel like I should move from A to B. Like I can cognitively think through that's a good idea and that's better for me. But going from the intention or the head knowledge of it to the actual doing of it is still challenging for people. I'm curious, like, what do you think makes it so hard for us as individuals to change?
Yeah. I mean, you and I deal with this every day as coaches. So many people that are engaged with coaches, this is what the nut they're trying to crack, right? Is like, I know what I need to do, or maybe I might have some blind spots I don't even know about. But even when I know I want to do this thing, how do I make it happen? You and I could probably talk about this for days because for everybody, it's very individual, but I will say a few things that I think are thematic.
Mm-hmm.
So one is, not to harp on the neuroscience thing, but the way our brains are wired does matter. So our brain seeks kind of short-term comfort. It seeks the dopamine rush. It seeks those things that make our brain and nervous system happy versus those things that bring pain. And change, just because it requires rewiring, is painful. It's literally painful. It actually lights up the same mechanisms in our brain that other forms of physical pain do. So
Hmm.
it's already working against us a bit. And so understanding like it's very natural and normal to feel resistance to that change and know that you're going to do that. So being aware of that, I think, is really important. I also think we mentioned this is that some of the behaviors that we do today, like let's say I want to lose weight or I want to stop eating sugar or I want to get up in the morning and walk or whatever it is I'm trying to do. Um, Sometimes the things that I'm doing instead, whether it's scrolling, whether it's eating that cookie that I want to eat, whatever, sometimes these are coping and numbing behaviors.
Hmm.
And they're actually serving a purpose for us. And
Hmm.
so it can take a little bit of self-compassion and a little bit of thinking through, what am I actually doing this for? Like, what am I avoiding? What am I not wanting to address?
Yeah.
How much of these behaviors that are things I don't want to be doing are actually serving a purpose for me? And by the way, we shouldn't beat ourselves up about that. It's a coping mechanism that's probably working,
Mm-hmm.
right? I've still got a job. I'm still I'm still productive in my day. I'm still achieving these goals. I have these things that I'm doing that maybe I'm watching too much TV. Maybe I'm on my phone too much. Maybe, like I said, I'm, stopping by and grabbing ice cream. Who knows?
Sounds good.
But there's probably a reason I'm doing that. And some of that is okay. And I think we have to be a little bit gentle with ourselves about these. And because there could be anything going on that I'm trying to manage, right? And I
Yeah.
think having a little bit more introspection about why am I doing some of the things I'm doing? Why am I making some of these changes? And just observing it with curiosity and non-judgment, I think
Mm-hmm.
can be really powerful. Um, so that's something else. So just being aware, like you have a whole lifetime of history here that
Yeah.
drives everything that you do today. And so starting to be more aware of that and understanding like where are these mechanisms coming in? I think that's part of why change is so hard, is because we are doing things for a reason. And by the
Yeah.
way, often that is working for us. And so
Mm-hmm.
I think being really conscious of that is good. And the other thing I will offer here is, especially, I see this in a lot of people that I coach and lead and do leadership development programs with, but I also see it, especially with women,
Mm-hmm.
is that we often deprioritize our own well being.
Mm.
You're trying to be everything for everybody. And we read a lot now about emotional labor that women take on. And I think that happens at work as well as at home, by the way. And
Yep.
us taking on a not insignificant proportion
Hmm.
of the work that has to be done around kind of managing the home. And maybe you've got elder care issues, maybe you've got children
Yeah.
who, we just take on so much. And then we're like, I don't understand why in this state of complete exhaustion, I
Yeah.
can't make myself get up and work out for 30 minutes in the morning. It's like, well, no, let's take a step back. Right.
Yeah.
So those are some of the things that come to mind when I think about why we may have some of that. It can be so hard for individual change, right?
Yeah, yeah. And I personally have found this beneficial and with clients too. Like, I love the idea of just being less judgmental and more curious about it. Like, yeah, I want to move from A to B. Maybe I haven't done it yet, but instead of being like, oh, I haven't done that yet, or, it's like that's so unhelpful. But like you're
You're
saying, like,
beating
how can you
yourself up
be
about it.
curious about it? Like, that's interesting. It's something I think I want to do. I'm not doing it, like getting curious about that. I think I love the way you frame that as opposed to the judgmental, which is like, I can't believe I ate the cookie again. It's like, okay, you ate the cookie. It's like, but getting curious, I think, can give you so much more insight around what's really going on. And to your point, how do you actually go make the change as opposed to the critical mind that so is just so easy to drop into.
Absolutely. That inner critic comes in and just attacks you. It's
Yes.
not very fun. And then of course, now you're really reaching for the ice cream.
Exactly. Now I need another coping mechanism.
Yeah. I
So let me ask you this, like if we change from kind of the organizational change standpoint, I'm thinking about leaders who are trying to drive transformation in the organization, culture changes or just kind of large transformation, which you've done before. What do you think are some mistakes or things that, we do as leaders that don't help us out? Like, what are some mistakes you think in making like big organizational changes?
Mhm. Well, to go back to kind of a older transformation tool, which is the change curve, which is still one of my favorite tools to
Mm-hmm.
use to talk about change. Our leaders tend to get ahead of their organization, even their own leadership team on the change curve,
Mm,
meaning they've been thinking about this change, they've been working with this change a lot longer than anyone else in the organization. And by the time they're tired of talking about it, the rest of the organization is just now starting the change curve, right? And
mm,
so what I often will coach leaders on as change leaders is remember how long you've been thinking about this. Remember that it's obvious to you why we should be doing this. It's obvious to you that how we're going to measure this change, why it's important, what the burning platform is for this particular change, not for anybody else. And so, yes, you're going to have to communicate about this 17 times over the next 18 months. And yes, you're going to get tired of doing that. And yes, you're going to feel like, why can't everyone just do what I've asked them to do?
yes.
Because they're just at the beginning of the change curve.
Mm-hmm.
So that is also where I often see change peter out. We all do, is that peer that was so gung ho about this change gets distracted with other important things. They feel like, hey, I already talked about it. I already told them what we need to do. They're starting to make the change. I'm good to go focus on something else, which
Yeah.
is rarely, if ever, the case in reality. So I think leaders really underestimate how persistent and consistent they need to be
Mm-hmm.
in managing change. You have to get everybody all the way through the change curve.
Yeah.
And it actually has to be adopted and it has to be part of the air that you breathe before you can actually stop talking about it if it's a really important change that you want to sustain. I think it's also one of the reasons why we keep seeing these articles. I think the first article I saw on this was probably 30 years ago, why transformations fail.
Yeah.
Still seeing the same articles. Here's why change initiatives fail, why transformations fail. Well, it's still we aren't investing in everything we have to do to keep persistently keeping momentum, explaining why over and over again, re-enrolling people over and over again. So that to me is a big thing, just that persistence and not giving up and not stopping and not getting distracted and continue to talk about it even when you're absolutely bored out of your mind, tired talking about it.
Yeah.
So to me, that's one of them. And I think another one is involving more people in change.
Mm,
And I think, for people who use employee action teams, use change networks with change agents at multiple levels of the organization, and really give them roles to play to bring back ideas, to help them shape the change in the way that they're going to be experiencing that change.
Yeah.
I think that's really powerful. Yes, it's time consuming. Yes, you're having to get more voices in the room as you try to make decisions. And you do have to decide, what can I let them make decisions about and what can I not let them make decisions about? So a lot of leaders shy away from this because they feel like we're just going to make a decision at the top. We're going to get the right people in the room. We're going to make a decision and we're going to implement it. And inevitably that backfires because they're the only people who really understood the history of why those decisions were made and what the vision that changes and why it's important. They're all on board, mostly. Sometimes they're not, but
Mostly, yeah.
and then now you have this organization that's like, what is going on and why are we doing this? And I don't want to do it. So I think the more you can slow down and involve more and more people, give them roles to play that are meaningful, give them this is kind of when we get back to that neuroscience, give them autonomy, give them control, give them pride in this process, you're going to see much better adoption over a much more sustained time frame. But yeah, it does take time to make that happen.
Yeah, I'm guessing by the time this is published, there'll be at least 20 people listening to this that were just about to get 8 people in a room, make a decision, send out an email about it, talk about it in one town hall, and think it's
right.
Done. So, like,
exactly right.
Listen to Diane. Don't do it that way because you're right. It's like it can feel like progress. I think as a leader of a team or organization, when you talk about it with your team and you get the name of the project and the logo or whatever, and you send it out, it really can feel
send
like
out some t-shirts.
Oh God, I love a t-shirt. And you really feel like it feels like progress. You know what I mean? So I think it has its own adrenaline rush to it a bit. That's like that false adrenaline rush. Because to your point, yeah, you might be feeling like you're doing things, but the goal is, like, to your point, to get everyone through the change curve long term. It does require involving more people. It does take more time, but the impact is so much greater. It's worth it. But yeah, I'm guessing there's like 20 people listening today because Lord knows I've done it. It's like, oh, let's get us in a room and make that
We've all done it.
It's like
there's also an energy element where you're like, do I have the energy to involve all of these people?
there's an energy part to it.
Yes, there is an energy part to it, but your willingness to do that is directly correlated with your ability to sustain the change. So
and if you don't have the energy, maybe it's not worth the change.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like if you think, wow, that seems like a lot to get this done, then it's worth saying, is this change worth it
right now? Yes. It's such a great point. I mean, on that point, to build on that point, I also have noticed a trend over many years where it's kind of the change of the moment. And a leader will roll out one change, and then 3 months or 6 months later, we'll roll out another change. And we kind of forget about the last change that we rolled out. And now it's this new thing that we're going to roll out and what that does is create a lot of change resistance in the organization. It also creates a lot of cynicism and disillusionment in the organization. And when I'm coaching leaders on these kinds of change leadership issues, I was like, realize that you're training the people who are most likely to help you in a change to not do that anymore. You're punishing your early adopters when you do that.
Wow.
And you're teaching the people that don't adopt the change to say, I'm just going to sit here and wait and see what happens. Those people that sit on the fence and are thinking, no, I'm not doing that. This is the 15th change this year. So those people that sit back and don't do anything actually get rewarded.
Yeah.
Because you're like, well, this was hard and people complain, so I think we're not going to do it, or we're just going to let it fizzle out and now we're going to go do this new thing. Well, guess who got punished and who got rewarded?
Yeah.
You punish the person who was like, okay, this is where we're heading. I'm going to get on board. I'm going to talk to my team about it. I'm going to do the thing that I need to do. And I'm going to teach the meeting in a box you asked me to do and go to the training you asked me to do and have the conversation. And then my peer who didn't do any of that, right? Guess which one of us learned not to get on the change train next time around? Well, we actually both did.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that is something we're not always aware of as leaders is you're teaching people how to adopt or not adopt change by the way that you manage change.
Welcome to Enelra. Have you ever thought about unlocking the full potential of yourself or the leaders in your organization? Imagine the impact of executive coaching. Ready to transform your leadership impact? Visit us at www.enelratalent.com. Enelra, coaching solutions that work. So let me ask you this, because we've talked about it a couple of times, so I'm not sure everyone knows. Just can you explain the change curve in general? Like when
Yeah.
you said getting people through the change curve, like what you're thinking about when you say that. So if someone does isn't familiar.
Yes. So the change curve was based on research around the stages of grief, actually. And it was, people were really looking at what are the stages that people go through when they experience a change. So I like to use the example of having a new puppy. So
Hmm.
let's say you get a new puppy. This sounds like a great idea. And it
Unless you've had one.
probably, right, it probably is. I mean, long term, it's going to be great, right?
Right. Uh-huh.
But if you new puppy, new baby, a very similar situation, right? So, you get in there and you're a little uneducated about what the reality of having a new puppy is going to be. So the very first thing that's going to happen is a little bit of ignorance, right? So we get in there and we might be in a little bit of denial, a little bit of a, what is this really going to be look like? The puppy's so cute and we're so excited about having the puppy,
Yeah.
right? So this first stage is really just knowing and understanding what actually is about to happen. So we've got knowledge, and then we kind of hit this valley, and we kind of jokingly call it the valley of despair, because that's when the reality sets in. That first night with the puppy, when, when they've chewed your best pair of shoes
Oh,
and they're crying all night, and you've
oh,
had 2 hours
Diane.
of sleep, and you're like, oh, that's what we call being in the valley. So
Yeah.
every change, even a very, very small change, has a valley. And what we're trying to do as leaders and as change leaders is we're trying to make the valley as short as possible, and as, we don't want it to be really deep. We want to be
Mhm.
shallow and short.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of tools and techniques we can do to do that, but everyone's going to experience valley with positive change, positively perceived change, or negatively perceived change. So you're going through the valley, and what's going to happen, assuming you don't completely check out and take the dog back,
Yeah.
is that you're going to try things, right? You're going to see, like, well, what can I do to help the dog not cry so much? How do I train the dog? You're going to try different things and see what works and what doesn't, assuming you're still on the change curve. You're
Yeah.
going to talk to other people who have dogs. You're going to listen to podcasts. You're going to read articles. You're going to maybe go get some training. Like, you're going to start trying stuff and
Yeah.
seeing what works and what doesn't. And that's really the kind of starting to get into the trying and understanding and adoption side of this. And then as things get better, you're no longer being kept up at night by the dog. You're learning, to teach it tricks and how to heel and how to not bark when people come to the door and not jump on you. And so you're starting to gain a level of competence and confidence and pride. And you're really enjoying at that point having this companion. And so hopefully you're ending up at a spot that's higher than where you started, and you're starting to have kind of fully adopted and integrated this into your life. So that's kind of a layman's way of thinking about the
Mhm.
change curve.
What would be your final thought on change, whether that's for an organization or an individual? Just like what would be a takeaway for people you'd say, for them to think about in terms of change and making change?
I think tying change to why, a purpose, is really powerful, both for individual change and for organizational change.
Yeah.
If people really believe in what you're trying to create in the organization, and they know that you're doing it to try to make things better, to move the organization to a new place, or for your own self personally, you just have to keep in mind, what's the why behind this? What am I trying to achieve? That can be really hard, by the way, if the why is 20 years away, which
Mm,
a lot of personal change it is, right?
yeah.
But what is the why that's going to be enough of a why that you're willing to take on the pain? And so I think consistently and persistently thinking about, how do I make that why very real for people, and how do I get them emotionally engaged so that
Mm,
they feel like this is not just a change that's being forced upon them, it's something that they believe in, that they
mm,
understand and will champion it as something that is important to all of our well-being here,
mm.
the company's well-being, their own personal well-being, the team's well-being. I think is a really powerful thing to keep front and center. And again, I think that's really true for personal change as well. If you can keep that really powerful why, it can certainly help you get back on the wagon if you fall off the wagon,
Yeah.
and you keep trying, right? Because persistence is key.
Hmm. Awesome. Yeah, and I can see that for both, to your point, personal change and work organizational change, like kind of reconnecting yourself to the purpose in a cognitive way and also in an emotional way. Like, what does
Yeah.
this really mean to me? How's this really going to make things different for me could be helpful. And I
Yeah,
think is
heart
helpful.
and mind.
Yeah, heart
Mhm.
and mind for sure.
Well, thank you so much for having me. This has been really fun.
Thank you for joining. Thank you so much. All right. Well, thank you all for joining us on the Work Well, Live Well podcast, and be well. Thanks for listening to the Work Well, Live Well podcast. If you're ready to grow as a leader or as an organization, head to enelratalent.com. That's ENELRA talent.com to learn how we can support you. Like what you heard? Follow or review the show so you don't miss what's next.